It really is my pleasure to introduce Ernan Haroubi, Sandy Japp, who's up here, and Robert Neithammer. Actually, the part about their abstract I'm most excited about. I'm excited about the whole thing, of course, but the part I'm most excited about is that seller channel choices are consistent with optimization. So maybe sellers do know some. Isn't it? It's in your abstract. You're looking at me, you give me this face, but you guys wrote that. I didn't write that. Anyway, that's the part I'm most excited about, and maybe they'll talk about it, maybe they won't. But without further ado,
I'll just write this and give it
Sandy
to you.
Japp.
Thanks, Eric. So I should tell you that this presentation is going to be one in three-part harmony. And so by that I mean that each of us will tell you just a little bit of what we believe will be a larger and more compelling, at least we find this a very compelling story for today. So first, though, let me just thank WIMI, let me thank MSI, and say that we are thrilled to be here. So if you think about yesterday's talks, what we see is a legacy TV channel, and then we see the addition of an online channel. And in our talk today, you're going to see the same sort of similarities. Unlike some of the talks you've seen so far, we actually have outcome variables here. So we will tell you about the probability of sale. We will tell you about the impact on price premiums for cars in these markets. Okay. Another thing that's a little bit different here is we are going to cross over from the B2C world into the B2B world. Nothing to be afraid of. What I will tell you is that actually a lot of things really do generalize, especially since we're starting from this basic point of having a legacy channel and then the online channel as well. The one difference that we have here is, unlike regular consumers like you and I, the consumers or the buyers in this setting are very knowledgeable. Okay? They buy this product on a regular basis. They know what they're buying. And the other thing that's a little different here is we're going to take the perspective of the seller. So everything so far has been focused on the consumer, the buyer, using multiple channels. And from our perspective, what we want to talk about today is, well, what's the seller's decision? How does the seller determine which of these channels are the various routes to market that he can take? Okay? And the other thing that we'll do here that's a little bit different from what we've seen so far is that we're looking at the sales of multi-generational used products, okay? And what I mean by that is that every product may have a distinct variation in its quality, right? Like every used car is not identically the same. So the work you're going to see is work that actually is very generalizable to different kinds of markets where you would have used goods or products that would come out more than once. Okay, for example, markets for cars, right? Markets for homes, absolutely. Every home for sale is not exactly the same. Markets for dates. Okay, people vary, and there's a little bit of uncertain quality in who you're dating and going out with. So the used car market is probably one that you don't think about a lot. Certainly it's not as sexy as the new car market. You know, all our attention is here on the new vehicles and what's coming out of the big three in Japan. But the reality is that the used car market is about 24 times larger than the new car market in terms of volumes. And we're talking about big stakes here. Over 80,000 businesses that participate in this market, whether they're sellers, whether they're buyers, whether they're wholesalers, intermediaries of various forms, all of that is accounting for a lot of money. And this is really, in the car industry, this is really where the action is. And the way this market is basically structured, I would say like almost 90% of cars, of used cars, how they're sold is they're sent to some sort of auction intermediary. So here's the seller's decision. The seller is saying to himself, I've got 1 or 100 cars. How and where am I going to place this stuff? Which channel, physical or online? So if it decides to take the physical route, the physical process looks something like this. If I want to sell my car at auction, what I need to do is I need to bring my car to this auction lot. For each car, the condition of my car, which is usually graded on a scale of 0 to 5, with 0 being salvage, 0, 1 sort of salvage or parts, that's that end of it. And then 5 is like practically pristine, very low mileage, good condition. The buyers will come to the lots and they literally will kick the tires. When the cars come by, these cars are so good, they can just literally like run their finger along the top of the car and know whether or not it's been repainted. What happens then is that the auction begins. The car will be driven down the lane, it'll idle there for 30 seconds, and for that 30 seconds, the auctioneer will start the bidding. The bidding happens just so quickly. I naively thought that, you know, I'm going to see people like hold up their signs like you sort of see in an art auction. No, they would just like lift up their eyebrow or just wink or something very subtle like that. And in fact, the person that I was with, my host said, you know, don't gesture too wildly, you might walk away with the car. So I was like, okay. You know, it's very dynamic, it's very exciting. And that's why I highly recommend it as a field trip. The other option as a seller is to go in the online channel. And in the online channel, you can see in this study, we sort of disguised the name of our intermediary throughout all of this. But basically, the benefits is you have instant access to a much larger supply. You have instant access to a much larger buyer base. Now the data. This auctioneer that we work with probably runs about 1 million cars through their auctions every year. Only a very small fraction of those are actually being sold both online and physical, because the online market in this particular case is only about a few years old. It's relatively new. We basically took out only those transactions that were potentially completed both online and in the physical. Okay, so we got rid of a lot of stuff. So now we're down to about 330,000 observations. And you can see that the proportion of how they're listed, both physical, online, and then what proportion of them actually sold through. The other number that's worth remembering is something that we're going to call the valuation number. So the valuation number of the car is basically a number that includes the make, model, mileage, the year of the car, okay, and whatever it's sold for based on a 30-day moving average. And in this particular data set that we'll show you, all of our cars are about 2006 and newer. And these are the various models that will be in the data set today. So Robert's going to come up, and basically what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to give you a sense of the seller's strategy across the multiple channels. Right? And so you can sort of think of this, if it's possible to do this, as Robert's going to come up and tell you a little bit about the seller and his cost, and he's going to try to characterize the different strategies that a seller might use. So the idea is that we sort of have two distinct parts, but of course it's sort of hard to talk about each one completely individually. So you might see a little overlap. Okay? Robert?
Well, thanks, Sandy. So as Sandy said, there's going to be a single car. The car is going to be a Corolla. I think the Corolla is the #1 selling car in the US, so that's a good one to pick. This is just a reminder that when I say car, the beauty of this data is that I don't have to worry about its year and mileage and all that. I just need to know two things. The price expectation is how much, basically, very, very similar cars have sold in that market in the recent 30 days, and its condition. The condition, we can follow up on the question about grading, is very detailed, and it covers all things like body defects, previous repair parts, interior, etc. The reason that that's kind of important is that since we only look at Corollas, I can focus on a Corolla in a given condition, in a given price expectation, and sort of see what's left, see what kind of variation there is left. Here are the different conditions, and here is basically the probability that a car that's on condition is sold in the different channels. Green is internet, blue is physical lane. This is restricted to sellers who've listed a car online at least once, or sold online at least once. So there is a bunch of sellers out there who don't even list online. But those sellers who have actually experienced online channel behave exactly the same across channels. So that was kind of the first surprise we had. That you find bad condition cars online just as often as you find bad condition cars offline. Here's the histogram of what cars are actually sold online. And while the green line does dip below the blue line, there are fewer sales of these lower condition cars. There is enough of these cars actually sold even in the rough condition online. And the big difference, now we're starting to find differences. It turns out that it's just much easier and much quicker to sell the car in the physical lane. This is a result of, first of all, the listing decision by the seller and the prices that they're asking for. And you can sort of see that it seems that they're asking kind of prices that are a little too high online, and so they're not selling as often as they would be in the physical lane. Another interpretation would be that it's just a thinner market online, or which of course goes directly against this idea that online access is a broader buyer base. Who knows? First, when we saw this, we thought, well, what's happening here is that the online channel is like gambling. So you have a car, you can just basically dump it into the physical lane and it sells. Or you can gamble online, see if you can get a good price for it. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back to the physical lane. So now that you know the model, I can tell you a few more things. So first of all, what's the relationship between condition of the car and the price? Well, sure enough, the worse the car, conditions lower numbers, you sell for much less money. And this is where, now you see the benefit of having that price expectation calculated for us. I don't have to condition on year, mileage, and all that stuff about the car, because what I'm plotting here is a margin between the price that actually occurred and the expectation that was given. We find that offline, the price is higher if the condition is really great, and lower if the condition is really poor. It's a flatter function online. This is all very nice. I can show you about the relationship between condition and price, but that's not what we came here to do. We came here to show you about the choice of channels. And here's what's happening. If you look at all the cars that actually end up being sold, all the Corollas that end up being sold, then, and by the way, these are all only condition 3 Corollas. This is really the same car. And this is what Sandy was trying to suggest. We have enough of basically replicates of the same vehicle over and over and over being sold that we can sort of get rid of any sort of car heterogeneity explanation of this. So 11,000 condition 3 Corollas, where do they get sold? In the physical lane. If you look at the cars that have ever been listed in an online channel by those sellers, only half of them end up being sold there. So these ovals are always terminal nodes. And how do they get there? What's the path from the first listing ever to sale? That's on this slide. Looks a little messy. Let me tell you a little bit about what it is like. The ovals are terminal nodes, and they add up to 100%. So basically, the percentages here are percentages of all cars ever sold. There's some listings that just sell, but if that doesn't happen, basically these cars end up being sold through the physical lane. So our initial explanation has to be sort of nuanced a little bit. It's not that sellers gamble online stupidly and never sell there and move on and end up selling the car somewhere else. They actually gamble in a way that some of those cars do end up being sold, 44% of them. But if that first contact doesn't deliver a sale, Future doesn't deliver it either on the internet channel, and basically the blue physical channel sales is where these cars end up being sold. And I'm almost out of time, so I'm just gonna go to my main finding here. So the main finding is that this is an aggregation of two very different situations. So you can see that once the car is offered somewhere, be it in a physical lane or on the internet, and doesn't sell, if it then makes it to the internet, you're on the blue line. The probabilities are low and kind of weird. Good, they jump up and down. Whereas if this is the very first contact the car is making with the market, then actually you can sell it on the internet pretty well. And what we would like to do is, as a next step here, is to do a better model than just a sentence and try to back out what drives these distinctions across sellers, some sort of differences in costs, in inventories, or something like that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ernan, and I think we have to move along.
Okay, so what Robert just talked about, well, he gave you the kind of big picture of what the data looks like. And there's basically two components to the model, or to the way we think about this story. One is that different sellers have different preferences over the channel because they have different costs. And the other is that different cars, depending on their condition and depending on how long they've been around and the seller has been trying to sell the car, have different expected profit on different channels. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The basic trade-off is between the expected premium that the car has and the expected probability of sale. Okay? The internet channel has a fairly low probability of sale. Now this is over all the different models. So this is in the aggregate, 70% of all cars on the physical channel are sold, are sold right away. This is the probability of sale. So most cars that if you list a car on a physical channel, you're going to get rid of it instantly. On the other hand, you're going to be selling it on average at a little bit of a discount. And that's a pretty accurate estimate, okay? It's a pretty good estimate. So we're going to look at how we're going to try to improve a little bit on that estimate, and we'll have a little bit of an improvement. But really what we're going to focus on is on the trade-off. So you have a choice between selling the car right away at a discount or waiting for quite a long time and selling at a higher price. The main thing, this is one of the things that we looked at, is how many failures you've had. So the longer the car's been out there, it declines. Now, why is that? Probably because you can think of buyers as accumulating signals, or you can think of seller losing patience and just wanting to get rid of the car. But for whatever reason, the expected premium is declining for both the internet and the physical channel. But it's declining a lot faster for the physical channel. So if the car hasn't sold for a while, the expected premium drops much faster in the physical channel than in the internet channel. So the expected premium difference is increasing. So the conditions themselves, there is a positive correlation between a number of failures and predicted premium difference, but we're not seeing the sellers necessarily react to that in their format choices. Although there's some evidence, but we're not really seeing that. Even in the internet, the online channel, right away, like first listing, they're gone. If you take out that first listing, which I had to here because I'm talking about switching, conditional on not selling in the first listing, it drops too. You're not going to sell that for a long time. And at that point, after 5, and so each block here stands for 5 rounds, 5 trials. So at that point, if after 5 trials you haven't sold, you're going to switch to, or after a certain number of trials that you haven't sold in the internet channel, you get impatient and you said, I just want to get rid of that car, and you move to the physical channel. We are able to beat the premium prediction by about $31, but we are able to beat the probability of sale by quite a bit, and that translates to about almost $400. Okay, good. So there's a trade-off. The way we think about it is there's a trade-off between premium and probability of sale, and that trade-off may be different for different sellers, as Robert pointed out, and that variation of trade-off exists in different dimensions, including model, condition, and the dynamic path that the car has taken so far. We can predict premium, we can predict sales probability, and we can predict switching points. And we're getting that in the physical, or it may not be a bias, right? Because if you think about it, most cars are sold in the physical channel, and relatively a very few cars are sold in the internet channel. And so, that may not be a bias. It's just that in the 2 channels, what we're finding is that one of them you're a little bit, you're going to get a little bit of a higher price than that prediction, and in the other channel, you're going to get a little bit of a lower price. And these are an average.
And with that, let's thank Sandy and Robert. Let's take a break and come on back in 15.